One day, Victor found himself visiting a stranger. That day, he had not planned any visits to friends or acquaintances. But, having called a friend at work and asked to borrow a small amount of money, he found himself at a corporate party in a commercial bank. The bank was small, only 5 people worked there and all were men. But when everything was drunk, the men began to run away, each to his place. Or rather, to the women. Victor was drawn to his home. Igor is a rather curious individual with whom Victor accidentally sat next to at the table and talked. With him, a bummer. Almost the entire evening at Igor's house, sitting in the kitchen, where his wife was busy at the stove and feeding the men, as they say, hot off the stove. The men continued to discuss the international and domestic policies of the country's leadership. Little by little the conversation switched to the future of the younger generation, and when Igor's offspring, who had just returned from the armed forces, slowly moved into the kitchen, "Victor, help me get this slacker a job." "And after the service, I can't see him," in a joking tone, said Igor. "Yes, this is not an easy matter at all these days. Do you know what unemployment is like in our city now? That's the thing. All the industrial plants have been shut down. And we existed only at their expense. Well, come up with something. You are an economist and an associate professor. Okay, let's think about it. What's your name, boy?" "And your parents named you Anton," the young man answered and moved his chair closer to Victor. "So, Anton, how do you communicate with a computer?" Victor asked. "Almost on a first-name basis." "That's great. Come to the Polytechnic tomorrow to the Department of Production Economics. Ask for Associate Professor Larionov. They will show you where to go and we will talk." Well, then Igor offered to drink to the successful resolution of the issue and filled the glasses. "It is too early to drink to this," Victor objected. "But you can drink to new acquaintances." They drank, sat, and listened to Anton's stories about military service. Then they drank some more, and when Igor's wife went to watch TV in the living room, they gradually switched the conversation to women. As usual, they started with jokes, and then, forgetting that their son Igor was taking part in the conversation, they switched to real-life stories. Victor immediately supported Igor, and they got going. Little by little, Anton began to tell about his AWOL, how he fell in love with the librarian and ran to her workplace during his lunch break. At this time, some kind of event was taking place on the upper floor. The tramp of many feet could be heard. It was loud, the music was accompanied by cheerful girls' laughter and sometimes applause. "Anton, who is having such fun up there?" Victor asked. "Yes, it's my former classmate's birthday. Do you want to go to them? They will even be glad to have new guests. And as a gift, I'll take a bottle of French cognac," Anton suggested. Victoria, the hero of the occasion, opened the door for the uninvited guests. Her face went blank, either from the cheerful dancing or from the alcohol. And she threw herself on Anton's neck. He kissed them on both cheeks and then grabbed Anton and Victor by the hands and pulled them into the living room. There was music playing, and in the center of the room, at least 4 couples were dancing. At first, Anton and Victor stood in the opening of the arch and watched with interest what was happening. But then a girl in a blue dress emerged from the center of the circle, took Victor by the hand, and dragged him into the crowd of dancers. The tape recorder began to play rhythmically, and Victor and Maria. So she introduced herself to him and started dancing quickly. Then came the turn of slow dances, when Stop was able to inhale the aroma of expensive French perfume coming from a strand of chestnut new soft hair hanging from Maria's shoulder onto her gorgeous chest. Victor, unable to bear it, was overcome by feelings, pressed himself against the girl's chest, and began to shower her neck with kisses. "Victor, meet my brother Pavel. And this is his wife Inna," Maria said, and led Victor to a young guy standing at the table next to an equally young girl. They drank some cognac to their acquaintance. Then Maria began to say that Pavel, like Anton, had recently returned from the army and married Inna, who had been waiting for him for 2 years. And now he needs to think about education. After all, nowadays you can't even sell cell phones at a kiosk without a higher education. Maria already knew that Victor was an associate professor of the economics department. He let it slip during the dance. It was because he had drunk alcohol. I think this is a completely solvable problem. Without a second thought, Victor said. And what interests the young man most? Electronics, Pavel answered. I served in the Signal Corps in the Army and have become attached to radio electronics. Well, come with Anton tomorrow to my institute and we'll sort it out there. And I'll first talk to the dean of the radio engineering faculty. Fortunately, he's my friend. And then they drank a little again and danced a lot. Maria was immensely happy and extremely cheerful. It seemed that her energy was inexhaustible, and she was spinning as if a Turkish dervish was grabbing Victor by the hand and dragging him into her crazy dance. She was spinning them as if and they came to their senses only when the clock in the living room struck midnight. My God, what are we going to do? There is no public transport anymore, said Inna. Don't worry, Maria reassured her. We'll call a taxi now. Victor, where are you going? To Karl Marx? Where's the Neva store? It's not far from us. We are going to Mirror Street. The taxi driver who arrived said that he would only go to the train station. That's great, Maria exclaimed. We are the opposite. Stop. He can walk. It's very close. While we were driving, we decided to get off at the children's park, so that no one would be offended. Victor to the right, and the rest to the left. At the entrance to the park, Victor took out a Chinese fountain pen with a gold nib and drew a diagram for Pavel. How to find the economics department at the Polytechnic. The pen was blue with an emerald pattern. Oh, what a beautiful pen. Just the color of my dress, said Maria. Do you like it? Then I'll give it to you, Victor exclaimed. And now it's close. The light of a street lamp noticed a gleam in Galina's eyes. While she was putting the pen away in her handbag, he admired her. In the semi-darkness of the night city, he could barely make out the cap of hair that was appearing. The thin Greek profile and long neck of the prostitute in a thick scarf and long winter coats tightly brought her slender figure together. Black boots, thigh-high boots, peeked out from under it. She reminded him of some star of Italian cinema. Which one there was no time to think about. His heart first sank, and then, straightening out, began to pound in a furious rhythm. He grabbed her hand and dragged her deeper into the park. She followed obediently. Victor even felt her hand trembling in his fist. Where are you dragging me? She asked. In the far corner to the toilets. Didn't go crazy. Let's go to the railway. There is a hangar for the train. We hide in it. Luckily, the train attraction was open. They tried to get into the carriage, but it was uncomfortable. So he pressed her back to the train. Maria was already ready for anything. Victor felt his soul filling with love for this beautiful girl, and he hurried. After all, it was quite cool outside. At that moment, Pavel's voice was heard somewhere very close to Venger. Maria, where did you hear a scream in the distance? Victor pressed his finger to his lips, indicating to the girl to be quiet. Maria, where did you hear Pavel's voice again? Maria, don't be silly. Come out. Let's go home. No action followed this call again. Maria, okay, we will wait for you at the exit of the park when the crunch of snow under Pavel and Inna's feet dies down. Victor exhaled and turned Maria towards him. Now he acted more confidently, lifting her dress. Afterward, Victor and Maria tidied themselves up and headed towards the exit from the park, where Pavel and Inna were waiting for them. It would seem that Victor should have gone towards his house. But he took it upon himself to see the boys off when they entered the entrance of their house. Victor remained at the entrance, took out his cigarettes, and lit them. And suddenly he saw a room in the basement through the window. Maria entered the kitchen. Pavel, Inna. Inna, a man, came out to meet her, who immediately pounced on Maria with accusations, to put it mildly, of her licentious behavior. Victor realized that this was Maria's husband. Pavel stood up for his sister. "Sergey, how can you talk like that? Maria was with me and Inna." Victor didn't listen any further. He threw away his cigarette and went home, where his wife and children were already seeing their 10th dreams. The next day, when Victor was sitting at his desk in the department, the phone rang. It was Maria. She asked Victor in a rather cheerful voice, "How are you?" "Everything is fine, and you are doing great." "So Pavel and Anton should come first. Come, you are alone, there will be no one here." "Got it," Maria answered cheerfully. "Great," thought Victor. "I haven't tried it on the table yet,